Hello, Internet. It's time for the second part of the Deadpool saga, Sins of the Past. Check out that sweet cover. That's right, all new X-Men Limited series branding. So we start off with a certain someone named Kilbrew fixing up Black Tom Cassidy after a certain unfortunate fall out of an airplane. These things happen. When his friend seems to come in and check on him, and things get a little dicey for a moment. But it's okay, because we cut away to a hot blonde in a bar going to meet a bandaged man. A bandaged man named Deadpool. I say this because Deadpool pulls off the bandages, and this is your first real look at under the mask. And it's kind of funny, because after the build-up and tension pulled away from it in the past, this is the new miniseries, and the first, moment of him being there, it's like, BAM! No real gravitas to it. And it's just, oh, come on, you should see the other guy? And it's just like, okay. But we should talk about the talent on this book real quick. The writer is none other than Mark Waid, so right now he's certainly had a surge in popularity versus his years in the comic industry being recognized for doing a good job, but now he's finally hit the status he's probably deserved for a really long time, given his amazing mark of runs on certain things. And this is one of those. And also Ian Churchill, who was up and coming. He'd done some stuff with Supergirl, and I think he'd done some other X-Book stuff, but this was certainly a way for him to come up and shine, but definitely still him proving himself, much like Madureira was proving himself on the last miniseries. So Mark Waid is definitely probably the most established creator to kind of come in and be doing Deadpool at this point, being really all of second writer, but there we go. Then we have a lovely little run-in with Deadpool leading him to his first time meeting up with Banshee, who is then known as Siren. But he also meets Banshee, the character that she named herself after because it was her cousin. So yeah, Siren and Banshee are meeting up with Deadpool. Let's not get it too confusing, right? It's only the X-Men universe, which is the most stupidly complicated thing ever. And so they kind of create a rapport, and Deadpool wants to follow up on the Black Tom Cassidy thing with Siren against his kind of initial thought, mostly to be hanging with the hot chick, but also because he kind of sees that she can't quite hang with the scenario. But it's okay, because then Deadpool gets knocked out, and we end our first issue on Deadpool getting knocked out in front of the girl. Then I want to point out the second cover, just because I love this cover. Look at the perspective, the thought, how creative this is. This is definitely the point where you really normally would just be having, the main character, plastered on the cover. I mean, second miniseries, second issue, they're still trying to be this is what we're selling. But it's Juggernaut that you see, but if you look more closely, you see Deadpool in the reflection. That's where the Shrinkins are coming from and bouncing off. And that is such an awesome comic cover. That's just, you don't see shit like that almost ever. That's just soak it in. Hit pause for a second. Bam. There. Then we have a flashback with a man named Sean Banshee. When he worked at Interpol on a fairly dangerous assignment, basically his last assignment, when actually it was none other than Deadpool that came in and saved him at the last minute by killing the people that were sneaking up on him, which morality, but he was working for Interpol, so a little more of the shadier side of things than clean cut all the time. And so without Deadpool realizing that was Banshee ever, Deadpool did say, "You owe me one," which kind of plays to this fact that Banshee's giving Deadpool a chance despite knowing a bit more of his reputation, but also realizing that there might be a little more going on, and that he kind of did owe him his life, but that wasn't it's funny that Banshee has that and holds it, but it also is totally influencing his opinion when he sends Siren off with Deadpool, which is kind of interesting because of how significant that ends up being for Deadpool and Siren's character, and is kind of lost with Banshee's character, even though he's still dead. But it's just an interesting little interplay, and seeing actually one of the few points where family actually makes a big influence in like character motivations in a big mainstream comic, because that really, outside of like the FF, when does that happen either? But inevitably, Pieter, who was the other Interpol agent that Banshee interacted with, is setting him up now. And so we have this whole weird sequence where Deadpool and Siren are finally cultivating that hate relationship to more of a flirting thing. And Juggernaut comes in, which is like, holy shit. And Siren's like, man up. He's like, oh yeah, sure, man up. That's the Juggernaut. So they're actually running away from the Juggernaut. They run to an office, and Pieter is holding a gun to Deadpool's head. And that's where we leave off. So Deadpool's just rushed into a gun, and you know Juggernaut's like right behind him, and he has Siren in tow, and that's like very much this is like an action beat issue, but it moves. I also forgot to mention that Deadpool had dumped a molten vat of lava on Juggernaut, so he's literally burning and scathing and coming in. And so Juggernaut takes care of one issue, but is his own issue all by himself. So there's that whole thing. And then you have Black Tom Cassidy, who's still being healed, but the package from the first episode has come back where a certain item in a bag comes through. And then Siren and Deadpool manage to escape the situation. At this point, Deadpool's like, I should just leave it alone. There's no money in this. There's no reason for me to be here. And but Siren kind of talks him into it, like how the situation's unresolved. Do you really want to leave it where it is? That sort of thing. And he tells her his name, and that's kind of the melting moment for their relationship. But it turns out that it actually is personal for Deadpool anyways, because the cure for Black Tom Cassidy and his situation of becoming kind of anthropomorphized Barkman is Deadpool's hand, as shown in this frame as he froths from the mouth. A little over the top even for this. But so now it's personal because it's his hands. And what's more personal than a bit of your body part on someone else? Another funny note is that the henchman that came back with Deadpool's hand was supposed to come back with the rest of the procurement, but only managed to get the hand. And so Black Tom's like, I'm grateful, but you failed. So he kills him anyways. And it's like, you got what you needed. Like, the situation doesn't... He fucking just kills his henchman. Like, that has to be bad for employment standards. I mean, this was before Glassdoor, but I really feel like in this futuristic mercenary world that with all the social communication, maybe they've worked out something better. Maybe that's why it seems like AIM and Hydra's calmed down. At least from inner drama, i.e. killing, if you will. I feel like that's a sign of the times. Just something to take in while reading this from a more current perspective. Or you could not take it seriously. Also, they kind of explain how Siren was raised by Black Tom, so she doesn't see him as fully evil, even though he's completely, like, maniacally evil, not only in this, but, like, in all the X-Force appearances of pretty much everything I've ever read him in. Like, more so than even most villains. Like, no redeeming qualities except supposedly in the past, so it doesn't, like, click. Like, you can't see this person raising a little girl without her being completely terrified of being in that situation. So just, they claim this thing, but it doesn't work really with the character. So probably not Mark Waid's best script. I don't know. So as they bust in, Deadpool actually finds Killbrew and confronts him on his healing going wonky, because it's kind of revealed that Killbrew had something to do with the experiments that had to deal with Wade getting his healing factor. That's going to play a very important role as we move on, so I'll come back to it and re-explain it, but Killbrew is first introduced in this series, so that's really important early on. The other interesting thing here is in the middle of a fight with Juggernaut again, Deadpool gets his mask ripped off, and the minute he does, he starts shouting, "Give me back my face! Give me back my face!" And Juggernaut's confused by this and all that. But it's this really interesting idea that's going to be played on a little better later. But this idea that Deadpool wears a mask because he's hideously misformed, and that's how he wants people to see him. And it's actually a psychological, tick. He doesn't function without the mask. It obviously pulled from certain ideas before, but in lieu of this superhero world, he wears that as his representation, who he is, whatever. It's not to hide his identity. That is what he wants his identity to be. So it's that idea of, this is really the first huge psychological we see of him being more an anti-hero than just a mercenary in a funny costume. We're starting to get a play on other stuff. It's not really played that way here, though. It's just more of an interesting character tick. But that's a whole thing that, again, we'll see. But it's really funny that he's in the middle of this dire fight with Juggernaut. This comes out, and he's lunging for the mask while Juggernaut's what the fuck? And Juggernaut could just smack him. And it actually, Juggernaut just takes advantage of it and just throws it off the side, and Deadpool dives for it. And you can kind of see the reason why, after he dies off, Siren goes to save him, but he kind of manages to keep his face somewhat hidden, but the minute he fully reveals what he looks like to her, she gasps and pulls back, and so, I mean, he's hideously misformed. He can't quite take it in, and that's been played upon before when Weasel comes and says, "I always said your face was the best distraction," and we have it here again. And it's interesting because this miniseries starts off with him revealing his face just for a shock value, but when it's without his consent, when he's not steeled for it, he goes psycho. And so yeah, very literally mentally unstable. So they manage to get out and kind of chase down Killbrew, and Deadpool promises to have Killbrew help him, but apparently never follows up on the offer. Spoilers. But that's where we leave it. And so the really important things we have are really on the last issue with the thing of the face, like I talked about, the importance of understanding of who Dr. Killbrew is to Deadpool, and that really the only reason Deadpool's aspiring to his better side most of the time is because Siren's been kind to him, and because he has the hots for Siren. And that, I mean, really, it's the idea of a girl is the entire reason he wants to change from being this low-class merc to being, at this point, just something more. And so that's where we're at the second mini. It's not really as Rob, because it's not really his first full-fledged appearance. This is his second mini, and it's a fun story. There's a couple of hang-ups, like I pointed out, but it's a damn good one. I'm sure it's easy enough to find if you're looking for the issues still, because it's before the stuff that's hard to find. But also, if you're looking, the Deadpool Classics collects the last mini, this, New Mutants 98, and then the first issue of the run that we're going to be talking about next time. So tune in, and I hope you all are excited for more Deadpool, because next time is when it gets awesome.